Yeah, welcome to another session of Marketplace Education. This is me, Ankit Jain. So I'm a technical architect and I'm Everything certified. I'm active in CSS events. This is my language URL. So feel free to connect with me. And for future sessions, as well, I have free information updated on the LinkedIn. I also share the technical content and see the WhatsApp group that we have, where we discuss around the job openings, with technical interview questions, and technical other content as well. And if you want to have a one-to-one session with me, you can book it on Talkmate. So today what we'll be covering is around the LWC interview questions. So let's get started with LWC. Like why this LWC came into the picture? LWC came into the picture because the Aura framework that was available was taking too much time. And why it was taking time? Because it was server-side JavaScript for which browser had to again convert that server-side script into its proper JavaScript which the browser understands. So this LWC is actually based on the web component framework that browser understands it by default. So what as a result of that, the performance is very much better, or I would say much more faster. And then other than that, it also offers like more security. What I mean by security is like here LWC offers a Lightning Web Security. It also uses the concept of shadow DOMs, which is again a important factor in our security from the DOM perspective. So this is around the LWC. Now, we already made, if someone asks you like in the interview, they would ask you around LWC versus Aura. So what we will do is like we'll explain like these are the advantages. Aura is good, but it's actually performance-wise it's down. And the major difference is around LWC is actually one-way binding. Like you can update the JavaScript and it will be reflected in the your markup. But if you update the markup, it won't be reflected in your JavaScript. But in Aura, it is a two-way binding. Also, security-wise, LWC is much more secure compared to Aura. Performance-wise, LWC is better, Aura is a little slow. So you can just mention these important differences between these two. The next thing is around LWC lifecycle hooks. So what are those lifecycle hooks? Lifecycle hooks are the different life cycles like which the component goes through. So in the LWC, there are various callbacks. Like first it starts with the constructor. So that is being called the very first time. Then the connected callback. Connected callback is like your document.ready, like where the component is loaded, like whatever initiation you want to do or you want to do and you get any data at the beginning of the load, you can do that in your connected callback. The next one is around your rendered callback. Rendered callback is like your document.onload. So window.onload, where everything is loaded, even including the images and everything. Then this rendered callback would be called, and rendered callback would get called multiple times. Whenever your reactive property gets updated, rendered callback would get called, and it's not at all advisable to call do a server call inside a rendered callback. Any doubts so far? So after the rendered callback, we have something called as disconnected callback. And very few people know, like people ask in the interview, like what is the purpose of disconnected callback? What exactly you do? So if suppose you are doing a binding of any component, you want to free that resource. Like basically intent is like it's like whatever is the like any event listener that you have written, you can remove that because your memory leaks and other things would happen. So to reduce the degradation of your app, it's recommended like in a disconnect callback, you remove those listeners. Otherwise, those things would be taken care only when the browser refreshes or the user closes that entire tab. So the recommended practice is like to remove any listeners and any unnecessary thing that can reduce the performance of your application. You remove those things in the disconnected callback. It's kind of you're doing a cleanup, like in Java, you have the garbage collector. So here, like it's like that function. Like in the disconnected callback, you do something similar to garbage collector, whether you remove the unnecessary use variables or remove the event listeners. So those things you do in your disconnected callback. The next is your error callback. Error callback, what it does is like if there is any error that comes in, then what it does is like it gives you a callback to catch those errors. So then you can accordingly show that on the UI. I hope that's clear. Any doubts so far? Okay. Let me just share a screen and show you that diagram, because the diagram actually is quite good. So I wanted to over that as well. Like this is how the flow goes in. Like the constructor gets called, and if for object property is distributed, that happens first, and then the parent gets inserted, and that then your connected callback gets called. Then a parent gets entered, and again the child constructor gets called. So this diagram you have to go through. Not exactly this would be asked, but it's for your understanding. In their interview, they would just ask you about those callbacks and how to what are the different things. Okay.
Yes, means they.
Yeah. So we have discussed about the life cycle hooks. The next thing that very obvious question that comes around is like, what are the LWC decorators? Decorators are something like which improve the performance of your JavaScript. So here in LWC we have @wire, @track, and @API. Then what is the purpose of the next interview question comes around is like, what is @wire? @wire actually gives us the functionality to get the data from the server, or you can say like get the data from the Lightning data service and get that in that variable itself. Like what it does is like it caches the data where one second. So I was saying about like @wire, we use it for getting the data from the server. Like it could be in any ways, like either you can use an Apex for that, you can use the Lightning data service for that. So any permutation combination can work out for that. Uh, this is the main use case of @wire. And suppose like if you're using with server, like you're doing an Apex call, then well, you will have to add cacheable equal to true. Again, with that cacheable equal to true, you would be able to cache that information, cache that data. But the problem would be like you won't be able to do DMLs. You can't do any DMLs with @wire. The next is around @track. @track is used to make a property reactive. Reactive means like whenever if you make any change, like it will be tracked by the Salesforce, like whether that variable is changed or not. So by default, all elements, all primitive data types are reactive. But if you have any user-defined data type or you have S objects that you would want to make it reactive, then still you would need @track. The next is @API. @API is used for sending information from parent to child. So, and even if you're placing any component anywhere and you want to pass those values as your kind of design attributes, you can use @API and get that information passed from the UI. So these are the three decorators that we use in Lightning Web Component or LDS. Related to that, again, a few interview questions comes in, like what is the difference between @wire and imperative calling? When do we do each of those? So the difference is, if suppose I want to have full control, like I want to check do any JavaScript validation around, like if a particular attribute is not empty, then only do a server call, or I want to do any DML, then I would go with imperative calling. But with @wire, I don't have any control. It would go as it is, as it wants. So that is the core difference. And again, the DML you can't do with @wire. So this is the main difference between the using imperative calling and @wire. Caching is good for the application as what we say. But if there are any scenarios like where you have done some updates and you want to get the data back from the server, you have to use the refresh apex function. Again, this is actually an important interview question around refresh. What do you use refresh apex function? I would want to share my screen and show you that. Because it's a bit tricky to implement because you have to pass that JavaScript variable, then only this refresh fix would work. So here, whatever variable you use in @var, this, sorry, not this one, this same should be passed in here. So whenever you are doing any update, when it's doing any update, like see, he is doing a DML here in delete account, he's deleting that. And again, he wants to update, get the updated data after that. So he is calling refresh effects explicitly. What Salesforce would do is it would again make an API, again make that apex call and get the latest data. Is it clear or is it a bit more complex? Yeah, so we discussed around the differences between imperative calling and @fire. The next thing is around that is very obvious question is around communication between various LWC components. So if I have to do communication between various LWC components, my approach would depend upon what is the relation between those two components. Like suppose it is a parent child, is it child to parent, or is it like totally independent? My solution my approach would depend upon that. If it is like from parent to child, I would recommend @API. If it is from child to parent, then I will have to go with custom events. If suppose it's like totally unrelated, then I have the option of choosing LMS or PubSub. Although the recommended approach would be LMS. Again, I'm not denying that you can't use PubSub or LMS within the same if they are like parent child or child to parent. But as a best practice, Salesforce says that don't go for that. Use @API and custom events as what I mentioned earlier. So this is actually a very important question around like how do you do communication between LWC components. Okay. Yeah, so we talked about the differences, different communication mechanism between LWC. The next is your Lightning Data Service. Lightning Data Service is like a UI API. UI API is actually, it gives you a method with which you can perform the standard function like getting a record, updating any record, even getting some metadata information. Like suppose you want to get the pick list values of a particular record type, you have like different methods like get pick list values. So these are exposed by Salesforce as a part of Lightning Data Service, or also we sometimes call it as UI API. So there are a couple of methods that are like get record and even for deleting there is therein. So there are various options that Salesforce offers for that. I would want to go just have a glance. You have means I want that you should have a glance of that official documentation as well. So I'm showing that like this is the one. So the important factor is like while you use the Lightning Data Service, you don't have to check about object level security or field level security because it already handles all of that in the for you. So this is like your UI API, what it talked about. It already checks like RUD and FLS things. There should be some methods also being shown somewhere. This is a Lightning Data Service here. And GraphQL. So GraphQL is an advanced concept. We'll go over that at the very last if we have time. Yeah. So Lightning Data Service is again an important question. Now, like Lightning Message Service, what is that? Lightning Message Service is a standard way of doing communication between various LWC frameworks, Aura to Aura, Aura to LWC, LWC to VF, VF to Aura, VF to LWC, All combinations are possible with Lightning Message Service. The difference between LMS and PubSub. So LMS is the standard way of doing things. PubSub is framework specific. And it's just say recommended by Salesforce to use PubSub only in the scenarios where LMS is not possible. The next LWC question, interview question is around what are our promises. Promises are actually a callbacks that you get like when you know like a particular event has been completed, or you know like what is the that final state of that a particular process has been completed. So you get a promise out of it, like dot then we have. So apart from the means after this promises, there are two important methods which you should know the difference between, that is around Promise.all and Promise.race. Promise.all is around like all. Let me just show you in action, because I think that would make it much more interactive and you would be able to get hold of that. So like this, Promise.all means what it would do is like once all of them are executed, then only this values would get executed. This console.log would get executed. It's like it tries to wait for all of it. Like it would say like what are the different ones for all of it, like P1, P2, P3. It would say it means it has the set timeout, so it would get past that parameters and then it would wait like after 200 seconds. Means it would get executed and that complete callback would get executed and it would come out. The other one minute. There should be a W3 school example as well. Yeah, this is actually the best example. Like here we have two promises, 200 and 100. So what would happen is promise dot so what it would do, it would wait for all of it. Like after 200 seconds, both of it would execute. And for Promise.race, race actually gets completed if anyone is already won the race, right? Like suppose there are three people in the race. When the first person is already, when the person completes that race, the competition is over. So for Promise.race also similar thing happens. Like if either of those three from multiple promises, any one gets fulfilled, then after that in your dot, then this method, whatever you have written in gets executed. Like here, like it's 200 and 100. So now what would happen? Like 100 is comparatively small. So after clean, the execution would stop. Like directly she has won the race. So nothing happens to that. Basically, whatever who has completed it first, after that, the method get this dot then gets executed. Yeah. So we talked about Promise.all and Promise.race. Another common interview question is around var versus let. The difference is between the scoping. Like, see, var variable, it's actually a global scope, and let is like a block scope. And you can declare a var variable multiple times. It won't throw you an error. But let actually will throw you an error if it is redeclared. And let is recently introduced with ES6, ECMAScript. So the recommended approach is to use let. The next question that comes up is around event.stop propagation and event.prevent default. So stop propagation, what happens is like it actually you have the control, like whether you want to further populate it, stop the propagation till inside, like you have various crossing various DOMs and all of it. But prevent default would only do it at the outer section of the DOM. It won't prevent inside, like drilling down on that. So the concept lies around that. So I'm going to share my screen and show about the bubble and the compost. Basically, the interview question would be like, how do you make sure, like, whenever grandchild of the grandchild component is updated, you want to notify the grandparent as well. So how would you achieve that? So that would be the interview question that the panel would be asking in. And for that, the answer would be like through using the compost and bubble parameters in your events. So what actually happens is your bubble actually tells you like uh, what is the like whether it would go through the DOM, it would propagate it further or not. That's what bubble tells you. Compose means like whether it would want it to go it like allow it to pass through the boundary or not, like from one level to another. So these two actually work in combination. Like when you use the normal events, you get these parameters, bubbles equal to bubbles and compose. So this is around that. Although people normally means if a person is proficient in JavaScript, then only he asks you about this bubbles and compose. But in very good companies like Salesforce, they do ask about these kind of questions when they explicitly hiring you for LWC skill set. I hope it's a little clear
Yeah, correct. Means
about time. So this is around your bubble and uh, compose. The next thing is around can you use LWC inside Aura? Yes, you can because LWC is standard web component based. So it's easily you can do that. But you can't place an Aura inside an LWC. And how do you hide or show multiple templates? So it's around your template if true, if false, it's like that. The next question is around slots. Have you heard about slots? The concept of slots is similar to your @API. Like, see, for @API, you could pass the parameters from parent to child. But if suppose in your LWC, I want to add a HTML tag dynamically at a particular place in your child component, I was not able to do that. Like, suppose it's like a normal your web page. Your header and footer almost remains same for most of the scenarios. So what you want is like there should be a particular markup that I can pass. I want to create a reusable component and that I will pass it in the all the other pages as well. So this is this kind of a use case where you are able to do the more reusability. So that's how we use slots in the LWC. Now, the last question that we would be able to cover it for now is around what is the best practices of doing LWC development. So the best practice is like use latent data service wherever possible. The reason being two advantages you get. First, you get the caching. Second, all your FLS are taken care by Salesforce itself, so you don't need to do anything. Second, like that you have to take care is around the number of fields that you want to query. Like even you're using latent data service, you're using doing an apex call. Limit the fields and rows that you need. And then wherever possible, use pagination and implement lazy loading. Lazy loading, what it means is like getting the data on demand. Like suppose you know, like even if a button is clicked on that button itself, you would do a call. Don't make it like on the connected callback itself, you get the data all at once. Don't do that. When you need it, then only you get that data. The next is like you always want to filter or sort the data at client side. Don't have your server do those kind of things. And the last but not the least, always clean the event listeners in your disconnected callback. So these are few of the best practices that you should follow. You can go through the official documentation in detail. With that, we are wrapping up the session on the LWC interview question answers. Hope you got some insight about that. Thank you.